The galaxy is vast, teeming with advanced civilizations, each boasting incredible technological prowess and unique abilities. Among them, the Kitri, a peaceful and highly intellectual species, are known for their deep knowledge of science and philosophy. Despite their advancements, they lack any real capability in warfare or physical prowess. In the eyes of the more war-hardened species of the galaxy, the Kitri are seen as intellectuals, but not warriors. This made them vulnerable, especially when a ruthless empire, the Kreth Dominion, set its sights on them. Vena was one of the youngest of the Kitri, a girl barely into adulthood by her people's standards. Her mind was sharp, her curiosity boundless, but in a galaxy ruled by strength and power, those traits meant little when survival was on the line. The Kreth Dominion, a cold and calculating empire, saw the Kitri as easy prey, ripe for exploitation. They descended upon the Kitri homeworlds without warning, subjugating them with little resistance. Those who couldn't fight or contribute tactically were either enslaved or, in Vena's case, abandoned. She found herself stranded on a remote, barren planet, a forgotten place used as a dumping ground by those who had no more use for their captives. The Kitri, in their desperation to protect their more capable members, had left her behind, considering her to be a liability. She wasn't strong, she wasn't trained in combat, and in their eyes she had no tactical value. Survival, they reasoned, was for those who could offer something in return. Vena wandered the desolate planet alone, her hope waning with each passing day. She had never been trained for hardship. Her people valued knowledge over physical strength, and while that had served them in their peaceful society, it was useless in a place like this. She could only hope for a miracle, but in this unforgiving corner of the galaxy, miracles were in short supply. The galaxy's view of humans was well known, especially among the more advanced species like the Kitri. Humans, though technologically inferior compared to the galactic superpowers, were regarded as primitive and savage. They were known for their carnivorous nature, their pack mentality, and their aggressive survival instincts. Rumors circulated about how humans had spread across various harsh environments, thriving where others could not, but the more advanced species dismissed them as brutes, driven more by instinct than intellect. Humans were feared, not for their advanced weaponry or technology, but for their relentless nature, their refusal to back down, and their ferocity in battle. To the Kitri and many others, humans were little more than predators who happened to be sentient. Vena had always feared the idea of humans. The stories she had heard painted them as monsters, dangerous creatures who would sooner consume you than help. But those stories were distant, just myths and rumors spread by other alien races. That was until she saw the ship. The human crew, led by Captain Alexander Reed, was on a routine mission to explore the outer edges of the galaxy, scavenging for resources and scouting potential threats. They had landed on the planet by chance, unaware of its grim history as a dumping ground for the galaxy's unwanted. As they scoured the landscape, searching for anything of value, they stumbled upon Vena. To say that Vena was terrified would be an understatement. The moment she saw them, her heart pounded in her chest. These were the monsters she had heard about, the relentless carnivores who showed no mercy to their prey. She could see it in their eyes, the raw predatory instinct that made them so feared across the stars. She tried to hide, but her feeble attempts at concealment were pointless. They had already seen her. The humans approached cautiously. To them, Vena looked fragile, her delicate frame and large, expressive eyes betraying her fear. She was nothing like the hardened soldiers or resilient survivors they had encountered before. She was an enigma, alone on a planet that should have been deserted. Captain Reed, always one to trust his instincts, sensed that she wasn't a threat. If anything, she seemed more terrified of them than they were of her. "Who are you?" Reed's voice was calm but firm. He wasn't one for unnecessary hostility, though he knew the reputation humans had in the galaxy. It often worked to their advantage, scaring off potential threats before a fight even began. Vena hesitated, unsure of how to respond. She didn't trust them. How could she? These were humans, the very creatures her people had warned her about. But what choice did she have? Her own people had left her here to die, and now the only ones standing before her were the monsters of galactic legend. "I'm Vena," she whispered, her voice trembling. She wasn't even sure if they would understand her, but to her surprise, Reed nodded. "And what are you doing here, Vena?" he asked, his tone softening slightly. The rest of his crew stood behind him, weapons at the ready but not raised. They were cautious, but not threatening. "I was abandoned," she admitted, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. It was hard to admit, but it was the truth. Her people had left her behind, deeming her unworthy of rescue. They had decided that only the strong, the tactically useful, were worth saving. She wasn't one of them. Reed glanced at his crew, his expression unreadable. "Abandoned, huh? That's a tough break." Vena nodded slowly, still unsure of what was about to happen. She had always been told that humans were dangerous, but these humans seemed different from the stories. They weren't attacking her, and while they were clearly cautious, they weren't the merciless predators she had imagined. "You're with us now," Reed said finally, his decision made. "We don't leave anyone behind." Vena blinked, stunned by his words. She had been cast aside by her own people, left to die on a forgotten world, and now these humans, these supposed savages, were offering her protection. "But why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you help me?" Reed shrugged, as if the answer was obvious. "That's just how we do things. You're part of the pack now." Vena, still shaken by her abandonment and her fear of humans, couldn't quite understand it. She had always been taught that humans were dangerous predators, driven by instinct rather than logic. Her people had been cold and calculating, and while they prided themselves on their intellectual abilities, they had made it clear that only those who could contribute physically or tactically deserved to survive. She had been discarded, considered a burden. The humans, however, seemed to operate on a completely different set of principles. The crew treated her with a kind of loyalty and warmth that was alien to her. Captain Reed made it clear from the start, once you were part of the crew, you were family. It didn't matter who you were or where you came from. If you were with them, they would fight for you, protect you, and ensure your survival. This was a stark contrast to the logic of the Kitri, who valued survival at the cost of compassion. The humans, however, seemed to balance both instinct and empathy, something Vena had never witnessed before. In the first few days, Vena was still cautious, keeping her distance and trying to comprehend their ways. They were undoubtedly strong, and their reputation as fierce, carnivorous beings wasn't entirely unfounded. She saw it in their eyes during drills or when they discussed combat strategies. But there was something more to them, a depth she hadn't expected. They weren't just warriors, they were adaptable, resilient, and capable of surviving in environments that would crush other species. As the crew moved through the barren landscape, gathering resources, Vena began to see their adaptability firsthand. They worked in sync, quickly adjusting to whatever challenges the planet threw at them. Harsh weather, limited supplies, even threats from local wildlife were handled with a kind of efficiency and determination that amazed her. They weren't just following orders, they were constantly thinking, adapting, and overcoming. It was an eye-opening experience for Vena, who had only known the rigid ways of the Kitri. Vena slowly began to trust Captain Reed. His leadership wasn't about dominance or control, it was about loyalty and protecting those under his care. He wasn't what she expected from the stories of human leaders being ruthless and savage. He asked for her input, showed concern for her well-being, and treated her as an equal, something she had never experienced among her own people. Little by little, Vena started to relax, feeling like she was a part of something rather than a discarded burden. Still, she couldn't shake the sense of impending danger. The Kreth Dominion wasn't known for leaving loose ends, and Vena had been abandoned not only because of her perceived weakness but also because she held knowledge that could change the fate of the galaxy. She hadn't told the humans this yet. It was too dangerous to speak of, and she didn't fully trust them with such a secret. But she knew it was only a matter of time before the Empire came looking for her. One evening, as the crew sat around their makeshift camp, Vena found herself watching them with new eyes. These humans weren't the monsters she had feared. They laughed, shared stories, and treated each other like family. They were nothing like the cold, calculated beings that had abandoned her. Despite their fearsome reputation, they had a strong sense of honor and loyalty. The more time she spent with them, the more she realized how different they were from what the galaxy believed. They weren't mindless predators. They were survivors, driven by something deeper than mere instinct. Vena's bond with Captain Reed grew stronger. He was always calm, always in control, but there was a warmth in his leadership that made her feel safe. He had an ability to inspire loyalty without demanding it, and it was clear that his crew would follow him anywhere. It wasn't just about survival for them, it was about protecting each other. The more Vena saw, the more she began to understand their pack mentality. In many ways, it was their greatest strength. But there was no escaping the reality of her situation. Vena couldn't hide her secret forever. One night, after struggling with her thoughts, she approached Reed and told him the truth. She explained that she wasn't just a discarded refugee. She was the last holder of an ancient secret, one that the Kreth Dominion was desperate to possess. The Kitri had uncovered a long-lost piece of galactic history, a weapon of unimaginable power that could either bring the galaxy together or tear it apart. And Vena, by a cruel twist of fate, had been entrusted with that knowledge. Her abandonment made more sense now. The Kitri, fearing the wrath of the Empire, had decided that it was safer to leave Vena behind, hoping the Kreth Dominion would overlook her. It had been a calculated move, sacrifice one to save the many. But the Empire wasn't so easily fooled. They were still hunting for her, and they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. Reed listened carefully, his expression unreadable as she spoke. When she finished, he didn't ask for more details. Instead, he simply nodded. "We'll protect you," he said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're one of us now." Vena couldn't understand why they would risk so much for her. She had no tactical skills, no combat experience, and the secret she carried put them all in grave danger. But that didn't seem to matter to Reed. In his eyes, she was part of the pack, and that was reason enough to fight. Unbeknownst to them, the Kreth Dominion was already closing in. They had tracked Vena's location and were preparing to strike. The humans, who had stumbled into this conflict by accident, were now targets in a much larger game. The Empire wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone standing between them and their prize. Vena had thought her journey would end on that barren planet, abandoned and forgotten. But now, standing with the humans, she realized her story was far from over. The galaxy had underestimated them, just as it had underestimated her. Together, they would face whatever came next. The Kreth Dominion wasted no time. Once they tracked Vena's location, they moved in with ruthless efficiency, their fleet descending upon the planet with precision strikes. Their cold, calculated nature had served them well across the galaxy, toppling weaker civilizations with minimal resistance. They expected this to be the same, a quick and surgical operation to retrieve what they were after. But they hadn't accounted for the humans. The first strike came in the dead of night. The Kreth Dominion ships hovered above the planet, launching a barrage of plasma fire meant to disorient and overwhelm any resistance. They were experts at this kind of warfare, using their superior technology to overwhelm their enemies before they even had a chance to respond. The humans, however, were not caught off guard. They had been expecting the attack from the moment Vena revealed the truth about the secret she carried. They knew the Empire wouldn't stop until they had her, and they were prepared to fight. What the Kreth Dominion didn't understand was the way humans fought. They expected brute force and reckless aggression, the kind of mindless violence they associated with carnivorous predators. But what they got was something entirely different. The humans didn't rush into battle blindly. They used the terrain, setting traps and luring the Empire's forces into ambushes. Every strike was calculated, every move designed to exploit the weaknesses of their enemy. It was warfare at its most brutal and effective, guerrilla tactics honed from centuries of survival in hostile environments. Captain Reed led the charge, his crew following his orders with unflinching loyalty. They moved like a pack, their instincts perfectly attuned to one another, knowing exactly when to strike and when to retreat. They weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting to protect Vena, and that made them relentless. The Empire's forces, despite their advanced technology, were ill-prepared for this kind of warfare. Their precision strikes were met with chaotic resistance, their superior numbers and firepower rendered almost useless in the face of human adaptability. Vena watched in awe and horror as the battle unfolded. She had never seen anything like it. The humans fought with a kind of ferocity that terrified her, their savage tactics leaving bodies in their wake. And yet, there was a strange beauty to it, an efficiency that came from their deep understanding of survival. This wasn't the mindless violence she had always been told about. It was strategy, instinct, and loyalty all working together in perfect harmony. Despite their reputation as predators, the humans were fighting for her, risking everything to keep her safe. They didn't hesitate, didn't question their orders. To them, she was part of the pack, and that was reason enough to fight to the death. It was something Vena had never experienced before, this unyielding loyalty, this willingness to protect even in the face of overwhelming odds. The Kreth Dominion, for all their technological superiority, was caught off guard. They had expected the humans to be primitive, easy to overpower. But they hadn't anticipated the humans' ability to adapt to any situation, to turn even the most desperate circumstances into an opportunity. The Empire's soldiers were disciplined and precise, but they couldn't match the raw unpredictability of the human crew. Every time they thought they had the upper hand, the humans shifted tactics, using the environment and their instincts to stay one step ahead. For Vena, it was a revelation. The humans were brutal, yes, but there was a kind of honor in the way they fought. They weren't just mindlessly attacking, they were defending, protecting something greater than themselves. She had never seen such selflessness among her own people. The Kitri would have fled, calculating the odds of survival and deeming the fight too risky. But the humans stayed, fighting tooth and nail for her safety, even when the odds seemed impossible. As the battle raged on, Vena's fear began to transform into something else. She still recoiled at the violence, but she couldn't deny the strength and resilience the humans displayed. For the first time, she started to see why they were so feared across the galaxy. They weren't just predators, they were survivors, and they would do whatever it took to protect their own. The Kreth Dominion, growing increasingly frustrated by their inability to capture Vena, sent reinforcements. They couldn't afford to fail this mission. The secret Vena carried was too important, too dangerous to be left in the hands of anyone else. Their ships descended upon the planet in greater numbers, determined to crush the human resistance once and for all. But the humans didn't falter. Captain Reed and his crew fought with even more intensity, their pack mentality driving them to push back harder. They weren't fighting for glory or conquest. They were fighting for survival, for each other, and for Vena. And that made them unstoppable. In the midst of the chaos, Vena made her decision. She couldn't keep running, couldn't keep hiding the truth. These humans had risked everything for her, and she owed them the full truth of what she carried. She approached Captain Reed, her voice steady despite the fear that still lingered in the back of her mind. She told him everything, the full extent of the ancient technology, the power it held, and why the Kreth Dominion was so desperate to capture her. Reed listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he didn't question her decision. He didn't ask for more details or demand explanations. He simply nodded, his resolve unwavering. "We'll keep you safe," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Whatever it takes." Vena knew, in that moment, that she had made the right choice. The humans, for all their ferocity in battle, were the only ones who could protect her. They understood survival in a way no other species did. They weren't bound by the cold logic of the Kitri or the rigid discipline of the Kreth Dominion. They fought with their hearts as much as their minds, and that made them different. That made them her best chance. The Kreth Dominion would keep coming, of that Vena was certain. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She had seen the humans in action, witnessed their relentless defense, and she knew that as long as she was part of their pack, they would fight for her with everything they had. For the first time since being abandoned, Vena felt hope. She wasn't alone anymore. The humans had taken her in, protected her, and now, she was ready to trust them completely. The galaxy had underestimated them, just as it had underestimated her. Together, they would face whatever came next. And this time, they wouldn't run. They would fight. The humans knew what was coming. The Kreth Dominion had thrown everything at them, and now the final push was imminent. They had no illusions about the odds. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and faced an enemy that would stop at nothing to retrieve Vena and the secret she held. But that didn't shake their resolve. If anything, it strengthened it. They had fought too hard, come too far to back down now. Captain Reed's crew moved with precision, preparing for the inevitable assault. Every member knew their role, every weapon was ready, every tactic planned down to the last detail. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about something bigger. They were fighting for Vena, for their pack, and in doing so, they were fighting for their very identity. The galaxy saw them as little more than savage predators, but they knew better. They knew what they were capable of, and soon the Kreth Dominion would know too. Vena stood at the center of it all, watching the humans as they prepared for battle. She had never seen such determination, such unity. They worked seamlessly together, their loyalty to one another palpable in every word, every action. It was a stark contrast to what she had known before. Her people, the Kitri, had always relied on their intellect, their cold logic. They had abandoned her because it made sense to them. But these humans, for all their supposed brutality, had stayed. They had fought for her, protected her, even when it put their own lives at risk. Now, as the Kreth Dominion's forces gathered for their final assault, Vena knew it was time to reveal the full extent of the secret she had been carrying. She could no longer keep it to herself. The humans had proven their loyalty, their strength, and she owed them the truth. It wasn't just ancient knowledge she carried, it was the key to disrupting the Empire's entire technological network. The Kitri had discovered an ancient device, buried deep within the galaxy's forgotten history, that had the power to render the Kreth Dominion's advanced systems useless. It was a weapon unlike any other, but only those with the ability to adapt, to think beyond the rigid structures of conventional warfare, could wield it effectively. And that was the humans' greatest strength. Their adaptability, their primal understanding of survival, was exactly what was needed to unlock the device's full potential. Vena explained this to Captain Reed, laying bare the truth of what the Kreth Dominion was after. The device could change the course of the war, but only if they could harness it before the Empire overwhelmed them. Reed listened, his face set in determination. There was no hesitation, no fear. He knew what had to be done. The crew sprang into action, integrating the device into their battle plans. It wasn't just about brute force anymore. They had to outthink the enemy, use the device to turn the tide of battle in their favor. And they would. The final assault came swiftly. The Kreth Dominion launched their full force at the humans, determined to crush them once and for all. The skies were filled with the Empire's ships, their weapons trained on the human defenses. Plasma fire rained down, the ground shaking under the sheer weight of the attack. But the humans didn't falter. They fought back with everything they had, using every tactic in their arsenal. It was brutal, fierce, and relentless. The device, activated by Vena and the crew, began to work its magic. The Kreth Dominion's advanced technology started to falter, ships malfunctioned, weapons systems went offline, and their communications were disrupted. The humans had found their opening, and they didn't hesitate to exploit it. They moved in with precision, using the chaos to strike at the heart of the Empire's forces. Vena, once horrified by the humans' ferocity in battle, now saw them in a completely different light. This wasn't mindless violence. It was survival at its purest form. They weren't just fighting to win, they were fighting for each other, for their pack, for the loyalty that bound them together. It was this bond, this relentless drive to protect those they cared about, that made them different from any other species in the galaxy. The Kitri had abandoned her because they calculated the odds. The humans, however, didn't care about the odds. They cared about the people standing next to them, and that was all that mattered. As the battle raged on, Vena realized that the humans, with their so-called savage nature, were the only ones truly capable of standing up to the Kreth Dominion. The Empire had always relied on their technological superiority, their cold efficiency. But they couldn't predict the raw adaptability of the humans, their ability to think outside the rigid confines of the Empire's structured warfare. The humans didn't just rely on technology, they relied on instinct, on strategy, on sheer willpower. And it was working. The Kreth Dominion, unprepared for the humans' resilience and the disruption caused by the device, began to crumble. Their forces were in disarray, their ships malfunctioning, and their soldiers overwhelmed by the relentless human assault. It was a victory born not out of superior firepower, but out of unity, adaptability, and the unbreakable bond of the pack. As the last of the Empire's ships retreated, leaving behind the wreckage of their failed assault, Vena stood among the humans, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and awe. They had done it. They had stood against one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy, and emerged victorious. And it hadn't been through brute force or advanced technology. It had been through loyalty, through the strength that came from standing together. The humans, once feared and ridiculed for their carnivorous ways, had proven that they were more than the galaxy had given them credit for. They were protectors, survivors, and in their own way, they were warriors unlike any other. They didn't fight for power or glory, they fought for each other, for the people they cared about. And that, Vena realized, was what made them truly powerful. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy was forced to reconsider its perception of humanity. The humans, who had been seen as primitive and dangerous, were now seen as something more. They were protectors of the helpless, defenders of those who had been abandoned by others. They had shown that true strength didn't come from advanced technology or physical power, it came from loyalty, from the willingness to stand by your pack no matter what. For Vena, the journey had been transformative. She had gone from being abandoned and deemed worthless to finding a place among the humans, a place where she was valued not for her tactical abilities or physical strength, but for who she was. The humans had shown her that strength didn't come from what you could do, it came from who you stood with.